The following lecture was produced by the Foundation of Human Understanding. And now let's join Roy Masters.
Now, how many people have hang-ups here? Oh, good. I'm needed. I want to talk to you about needing me too, because I could be a hang-up. Anybody need me? Yeah, you do need me. So there's an honest need. Yeah, there's. You see, hopefully, when you begin to understand the things I'm saying for yourself, more of it, there'll arrive at a certain point where you don't need me anymore. But I will take the place of a father, even though I'm maybe younger than you. There's a certain quality that you need from me, whether you listen to it on the radio or you get to know me a little more personally. There's a certain quality emanating, hopefully, that takes the place of something, gives you something that you never had as a child. Now my children, thank God, have that in me. As they're growing up, every little turn of the way, I see them doing something silly or dumb, and we sit down and we discuss it, or while we're having dinner, I'll talk to him about how he's dealing with his girlfriend and that sort of thing. The other day I called him up, and it was just time. I had to call him up on the telephone, and I said, Alan, I've let you play around with your girlfriend for about 2 years, and I've told you before you're addicted to your girlfriend. And I said, I want you to understand something. I know you have a little pain now. Right now you're suffering a little pain because it's too much of a good thing. You're addicted to this girl, and you haven't wanted to admit it before, but now it's hurting. I said, now I want you to know something, that whenever a person patronizes you, whenever a person makes you feel that you're good, like God is good, and puts you on a pedestal by their respect for you, undue respect, that's building your ego. And when your ego is affected thus, I didn't give him the psychology of it or the reason for it, but you will have attendant to that feelings of life, and attendant to those feelings, a feeling of gratefulness, like somehow they've given you a lease on life, hope. But what that is you're becoming an animal. You're changing. You're no longer the person you were before that game was played with you. And you're changing. And this changed nature, this feeling nature, this nature that feels in the presence of such love, support for ego, is dependent upon that love. But I tell you, behind that love you'll find the terrible manipulation. I tell you, son, that it's not only women, everything is that way. Everything that gives you feeling is changing you and causing addiction. And if you really want to find life, of course, what can you say to a young man who is feeling for a girl? Not a whole lot, because it blows his brain every time. I mean, it's a sort of madness. The Greeks, they sent condolences when a guy was going to get married. And I'm joking, because he knows a temporary insanity. Suddenly he's against all his friends and his family. He knows no reason. He has an obsession for the woman, and he can't do enough for her. He's addicted. And drug addiction is really a form of, a variation of the same thing. Alcoholism, music, even the innocuous things that you think are socially acceptable. Music is socially acceptable. Music is addicting. And it is just as dangerous as Pretty Woman. Just as dangerous as the worst kind of drug, marijuana. the hard drugs. Everything is addicting that supports your ego and helps you to escape. Now, the hard thing about giving up anything that's bad for you, which you may realize is bad for you, and when I say realize it's bad for you, not because somebody told you, because you know it yourself. And you can't change anything until you know it yourself. You have to know the truth that it's bad for yourself, not because somebody said it's bad for you. You cannot live according to an external conscience, but you can be trapped into rebelling against doing all the foolish things. I mean, I didn't say that very well, but you can be trapped in rebelling against your own best interest. I mean, even the gentleman I'm staying with, Henry Blaine, he stopped smoking. He was a terrible smoker. And I've known him for a long time, and he knows how I feel about it. He knows I love him. So, but in regard, he's a decent man, except he's got this little thing, and he's got this stubborn, rebellious little streak in him. He's a decent man. So he's smoking a cigar now. I said, Henry, I thought you stopped smoking. He said, the last couple of days since you've been here, I've been smoking more. I said, there's your rebellion, your ego. You have to learn. See, he has rebelled. I guess people have told him this and told him that and made him rebel because you think you're asserting your own will when you're rebelling. You're not. If someone says don't, you do, and someone says do, you don't. But that's silly. You still be going, because people can play game reverse psychology with you. I remember the story of, this is all kind of relevant, and I'll just meander a little bit if you don't mind, because I've got a lot of subjects to talk about this evening. But this rebellion thing is a good place to begin, the subject of addiction. But I was in the jewelry business a long time ago. I used to be a diamond cutter. It was one of my professions. So I remember one day, a man walked into a store and I watched the salesman. He said, I'd like to see a watch. I said, yes, sir. So he brings out a watch. I don't think I like that one. He says, what about that one on the case? He said, well, that's too expensive for you. I said, what do you mean too expensive for me? So he gives him another one other than the one he pointed to. He said, I want to see that one on the case. He said, but it's really too expensive for you. Well, he got so angry he bought it. Anybody been that kind of sucker? Has it happened to you? Be careful now. We're talking about just little addictions. One of the laws of the Talmud, Jewish laws, they teach all the little niceties you really should be discovering for yourself. But one of them is that you should never really wander into a store, feeling the merchandise. You start to feel your girlfriend and you get hooked, right? You have to take her home with you. You get married. It starts that way, doesn't it? You didn't intend to buy it in the first place. You just want to feel how it feels. Gee, I'm going to get embarrassed here in a minute. Well, it's the same thing whether you go in a store and you pick up a ring or you pick up something, a little mink stole or whatever it is you kind of admire. It's the ego thing, what it would like to have that on, and you start to feel it. And you start to want it. And you like the feeling, and in order to hold on to the feeling, you have to buy it. You feel too embarrassed. You see, the salesman can obligate you. You kind of want it, and you'd have to be honest with you. You can't afford it, but the salesman makes a way for you, makes it possible for you to have it on credit or something. And out you go with the store, and you say, what am I doing with this thing? And then you hate it. Then you have love-hate relationship with your mink stole. Then you have a fight with your husband because you shouldn't have bought it. But that's an addiction. Sometimes you can get from things, you can get a feeling from things, a sense of newness. So you don't have to be an alcoholic. You can be a kleptomania. You can be a person who gets from material things a certain comfort, buying a new car. You see, you don't notice the addiction when you buy a new car and you buy a lot of things you don't need. You don't see a lot. You're not locked into one thing. You're buying a lot of things. But you have to have something new so that you can feel new. New clothes is like a new skin. It represents growing. We should be growing. We should be constantly renewed within. But when we don't have that renewing within, we feel like we're dying. We feel bored. We have to have something exciting, something new, to make us feel new. We involve ourselves with material things. But there's something about involving ourselves with everything. See, I've included everything, so from just buying things, listening to music, drugs. Of course, there are some things which one should not do. One should not take drugs. It's foolish. There are some things that you have to give up altogether because your common sense tells you that you can't have a relationship at all with it. There are some things you have to change your relationship with. The trouble is we have a hang-up. Because when it comes time, when we start to hurt ourselves with the things we use, we hate the thing that hurts us. And maybe we successfully rebel against it. Maybe we don't. If you rebel against something, you may end up involving yourself with something else. For instance, you may have a fight with your wife, you got involved with her, and now you find you're addicted and you're trapped. That's the way you feel. Now, how do you get away from your wife or this woman that nags you? Because behind the pleasure, behind the enjoyment, behind the lie, behind the worship, there's the evil that eventually you must face, that has trapped you. And then you find yourself trapped and you want to rebel. Sometimes you can rebel against whatever has trapped you, whether it's your marijuana, whether it's your wife. It doesn't make a difference. You get angry at what has trapped you, and you rebel, and maybe you succeed, but you can't rebel without something else to get addicted to. There is no such thing as freedom from anything you're addicted to, except that you become addicted to something else. Now, every psychologist tells you the same thing. I mean, you're just swapping addictions. You smoke, and when now you decided that smoking has a diminishing return, it solved the problem, but then it becomes the problem. Now, how do you deal with that problem? You swap it with another problem. So you solve one problem with another problem, so you start eating. If you give up the smoking, you have to start eating. Or you have to start going to church. Or you have to go back to women again, which drives you to smoking and drinking again. And then sometimes you're doing them both at the same time. There is an absolute freedom that you must find. If you don't find this middle ground, this freedom, you'll always be going from one thing to another. Because what saves you, this is really the bottom line, what saves you claims you. Now this is a religious principle, but it works if Satan was saying it. What saves you claims you. So you have a good fight with your wife. You run out of the house. Now if you don't have anything to go to, if you don't have someone who can capture you in that state of sort of freedom, temporary freedom, you're going to feel anxiety, you're going to feel guilt, and you're going to go right back to the woman you hate. Because you can't live without tease. Now there's that love tease, that supports your ego, and then you become addicted to this tease, and then you see that behind the love tease there's something not so loving. And you feel trapped, and out you go in rebellion, and now what do you need? Another love tease, another woman. Now she's going to take the place of the woman you once loved, and then she's going to turn out to be a witch too. She has to be a witch, because if she was a decent girl, she wouldn't have anything to do with you. Right? Okay. I have a murmur of guilt running through the ladies in the audience. So now you're addicted to this woman, and you can get married 4 or 5 times like that, and you're not going to solve the problem, because each time every time you swap an addiction, every time you run from one addiction to another which saves you from the past one, you get caught up much more surely in the one that saved you. And it could be music, it could be a cult, it could be a church, it could be cigarettes, it could be just Roy Masters. I'm not excluding myself. I don't want you to be caught up with me. I want you to stay around and listen. See, and I want you to get what you need and wean yourself away. For example, someone asked me a question a few moments ago, and they said, how do you know that we're addicted to you? And I said, if you can't find me on the radio and you panic, you know that you're addicted to me. See? So you know, because the person you're addicted to is the ground of your being. And I want to explain to you a principle now. As I started to say in my opening remarks, that you're intelligent people, and I know that there's been many attempts to try to stop you. Even when you try to stop a baby sucking his thumb, he's going to suck his thumb more. You're adding to the frustration. You're acting as an external conscience. You must not act as an external conscience. The whole trick, if I may use the word trick, is to make a person's own conscience function on their behalf. That's true freedom. So when you try to tell a child, now stop sucking your thumb, it's not good for you, and start put poisons on it or bitter things on it, you're actually making the situation worse, because why is he sucking his thumb? Because he's pacifying himself. He's taking a drink. He's sucking on his mother's nipple. He remembers, he's overcome with a sense of security. Just touching something. For example, you know that when you are addicted to something, how you come alive in the presence of it. Once you become addicted to alcohol, it has a way, just being there, turning you on. And making you sin. And making you need the drink to forget the sin. It's terribly addicting. So, a baby's thumb is like a mother's breast. A baby is addicted to mother. Maybe the baby was taken from the breast too soon, little resentments, and still needs that. And maybe mother rejected it, and the child resents it, and it creates a greater need, right? Insecurity. When you're wrong, you're always insecure, and so all you have is a breast when you're a baby. You also have a breast when you're 21 too. I hate to tell you, men are addicted to breasts. In case you didn't know, weird creatures. Can you imagine being addicted to a breast and a rear end? It's absurd. From an objective point of view, it really is. Well, and whatever it has going for it, it keeps going for it. Now, I want you to know you can be addicted to anything. And if you come to my lecture tomorrow, do we have people coming to the lecture tomorrow? I hope all of you will come, because you'll see sights. Not that one. You'll see sights you wouldn't believe. But I can make a person addicted to a matchstick. I can make a person addicted to a floating feather in the sky. And his whole life will revolve around he get the same feeling that the alcoholic gets from drink, and a man gets from looking at breasts, and pardon the crudeness, but it's really demeaning to the ladies. But why do the ladies demean them? Why do they allow that? They like it. When I walk down the street and I see all these nude theaters, what a degrading thing for ladies to allow their form. After all, it is your form that's up there exploiting the men or allowing itself to be degraded. I don't know which way you look at it, but women like that. See, women, there's something about this power play that wants the addiction. It's almost like paying homage to the one you're addicted to. And it's the only way you're going to get homage. See, there's two forms of homage. To God goes the glory. Now, that's only when men are free from addiction. But the only way you're going to get respect and admiration and love, and only way you're going to play God, is when everybody is addicted to you or to your substance. See? and gives the same attention compulsively to you, because they've lost their free will to give it where they should, as you would to the Creator within. So there's a game being played with your brains. There's a game being played with your mind. And the people in power know it. And nothing is beyond addiction. You can be addicted to being a snob. You can be addicted to being an educator. And you can tease people with education. You can set yourself up as a role model and suck on a pipe. Right? You look like an intelligent intellectual, like you've got it made and you know all the secrets of the universe. Right? You become a mind molder. And you make people think that if they don't know what you know, they'll be nothing. And they'll subject themselves to almost any kind of harassment. Tell people that unless they get a good education, if they believe that lie, the ego believes it, that they'll be a garbage collector, you'll be a nothing. Now, once you believe that, you're addicted to the knowledge bar. And they can harass you, and they can... Do you remember, what's that, the paper chase? Who was that swine who acted that role of... What was his name? Yes, Professor Kingsfield. That Professor Kingsfield needed a good punch in the nose. He takes mushy minds, he said, he molds them. But first of all, he makes them mushy. Then he molds them. That is the technique. That is a professional tease. He is as man to men as women are to men. I mean, an aggravator, a tease. Women like to tease men because by teasing, they're able to shape the man to need the tease. And when you need the tease as a source of life, what is the tease becomes? It becomes God. And the teased becomes the created, addicted. It will do anything for the life that comes through the tease, or the promise that comes through the tease, that can never be fulfilled. Which leads me to a point. As I'm meandering here, I want to show you the principle. As I said a few moments ago, you are intelligent people, and you must not give up your habits simply because a scientific study says. Because a scientific study can say that marijuana can make your brains melt and your eyes fall out of your head, and you'll still rebel against the authority of it, and you'll still go ahead and assert your own independence from the authority of other people, the dictates of other people. You'll say it's a lie, or you'll just rebel, and you'll get angry at the attempt to stop you, to interfere with your free will, because you tend to think that what you're doing is your own free will, because it becomes that. For example, a smoker will say, especially a dyed-in-the-wool smoker who's not ready to face himself, I can stop smoking if I want to, but I don't want to. The truth of the matter is, he's taken his compulsion, which is really a cover-up of his failing, and a failing itself, an addiction, a total loss of free will, and his ego is not admitting it. He's saying, I do this because I want to, I choose to do it. He's lying to himself. He's settled the issue with his compulsion. If he could see it was a compulsion, he'd be on the way to salvation from it. The trouble is, if you do see it's a compulsion, you may resent seeing it. Then you've got another problem, because you resent the means of being saved from it. For instance, I might say to you, like I said to Henry a little while ago, I say, see your rebellion when I pointed out that you're smoking the cigar, one cigar a day. You know, I mean it in love. I know you have a bad lung, and we love you, want to see you alive. but he smokes a little more just because of that. That's silly. Now, what I was trying to get him to see is that he's rebelling. He knows how I mean, but he took me a different way. He made me look like I was one of those other. For a moment, just for a moment, I became one of those people who nag. That gives a person an excuse to go on doing what they're doing. Now, of course, I could be one of those people who nag, but even then, one should be strong enough to see the point they're making. My enemies will often tease me by pointing out my faults. Now, if you love someone, you do point out their faults, because you want them to realize it. You don't want to stop them. But some enemies will point out your faults because you know that when you point them out and chide you with them, that you don't like, you see, you'll feel angry, you feel rebellious, and you'll end up doing it more, and then have a good laugh. Because they know that you're caught up in this catch-22. So when you see your faults, be glad you can see them. When you have a friend or an enemy, be careful of that. Because the enemy could be the source of your salvation if you have the right frame of mind to receive it. Your enemy could tempt you. You'll never quit. Why don't you be like us? Quit trying, give in to your lower nature. I mean, it's the way we are. It's the way you are, man. Just accept it. I mean, they could make you feel silly. They feel guilty about trying to change. And there's enough guilt there too. You have to be very mature, because I've freaked out a lot of my enemies when they pointed out I had a fault. When they expect me to be upset about it and angry about it and frustrated over it and get worse, I got better. I reversed, in a sense, their intent. They pretend, sometimes they pretend, under the guise of helping you. They know very well that will get to you. Sometimes they're sweet, and I'll give you a perfect example. One of the first cases I came across was a woman who had a daughter who was becoming a prostitute. She was really cheapening herself with all the boys. When she was young, she wasn't so nice. In her mind, she had never resolved the guilt. In her own mind, she never resolved the guilt of it. Now she was confronted with the innocence of her own child, which she was always hovering over as if to be protective. What a dirty trick. Can you imagine the outcome of that? What the child perceived that as mistrust, an invasion of, what word am I looking for? But an attempt to restrict freedom, to impose her will, her idea of goodness on the child. But deep down inside, it was really a clever, subtle projection of her own nature into that child, so that child would be what she was, and she would look like the innocent one, and the child would be now what she was when she was younger. That's a game that's being played. There are people who don't want you to be off drugs. You may be a drunk, an alcoholic. You've got a nagging wife, and she nags you to stop. She doesn't want you to stop. Maybe she does. Maybe she does in the wrong way. Maybe she really means to stop, but she doesn't know how to handle you. She gets angry with you and gets upset with you and frustrated because you're ruining the marriage. And maybe she's innocent of the effect she's having on you, but she's going to make you worse anyway. She's part of the compulsion. She can't help getting upset and you can't help getting upset with her. You're trying to help her, but in helping her, you're actually, with a woman helping a man, she's actually demeaning the man, reducing him, taking his manhood away. After all, a woman shouldn't have to tell a man to be a man. She shouldn't be like his mother to him. Maybe that's the reason why he married her, because he's like the mother who nagged him. And that way he could always rebel and be free, and maintain a sense of freedom. And if he didn't have something to rebel against, he would see what a jerk he was. You have to have something to rebel against to feel like you're right. You have a cause. So a man could marry a woman that nags him, just like his mother nagged him, and that way he can do the wrong that his mother set up to do, as if It was his thing.
For more information on the special observation exercise taught by Roy Masters, a catalog of the many books and audio tapes available, or a list of where you can hear Roy Masters in your area, please write to us at Post Office Box 1000, Grants Pass, Oregon 97528, or call during regular business hours West Coast time at 1-800-877-3227. And be sure to visit us on the World Wide Web at www.fhu.com. Thanks for joining us.